Hello and welcome to the first tutorial by Tech in Schools Initiative. We're going to use Marvelous Designer, Character Creator, and Unreal. First, I'm going to import a character that I'm going to use from the Reallusion Store Smart Gallery from Working Class Heroes. And we're going to use this as a base character. We're going to change the lips a little bit, and we're going to get rid of things that we don't need, like the eyebrows. Additionally, in the end, we're not going to need hair, but for right now, we're going to have a hair temporarily. I'm also changing the glasses so that they are green to match the character that we're trying to build. And I'm using the diffuse color instead of changing the texture, just because it's not that important. Also, what you want to make sure is that your character is set up in a way where it's modular, so that you can remove hair and clothes pretty easily. So right now, we are going to get the shoes that we need. So we're going to delete the shoes that come with the character, and we're going to put on some new shoes. All of this content is available in the content store. Next, we're going to grab some underwear because we don't want to be naked. So after that, we're going to choose some random underwear. It doesn't really matter because it will be hidden. Now the most important part, the shoes. So as you see, they actually don't fit. So we're going to use the edit mesh tool, and we're going to actually grab all the vertices, and we're going to attempt to make it look perfect. What's really good about Character Creator is using this tool. It allows you to actually edit the mesh in real time and further make it look more realistic. As you see, I'm just grabbing all of the vertices and moving them onto where it should be so it aligns with the character's foot. And this has to be done with both feet. Unfortunately, sometimes the shoes aren't meant for the foot that is wearing them, so you have to make some edits to make it work properly. There's a few ways that you can do this. The main way is what I'm doing right now, but then sometimes you have this issue right here where you just have some mesh. So to reveal it, I go to Sculpt, which is my favorite tool for quick edits, and it allows me to bring forward the mesh of the foot, or the shoe rather, without actually changing it in Blender, for example. Once you have your character set up perfectly with the shoes, I went and deleted the hair because in the end, we're not going to need the hair. We're going to be using Unreal Groom assets for hair. But I like to have some hair, so when I'm testing everything in iClone, we can see how physics will work with this character. Now, before I do any of that, I'm going to make it look a little more realistic. So I'm going to combine skin gen tools with a cartoon character. The cool thing about this is skin gen allows you to manipulate every aspect of the part of the skin that you're editing. So for example, this is the cheeks, and it's giving it some realistic texture, some human-like texture, and it allows you to really edit the color, the hue, the size, the opacity, and with all of those tools, we're able to get something that looks really, really good. It looks natural. It looks like it belongs. And there's a lot of other tools inside of SkinGen, but we're not going to use them all because we are not a totally human realistic character. It's kind of in the middle. But what we are going to use is one of my favorite tools inside of SkinGen, which is like inside makeup, you're given like eyebrows. So the eyebrows are actually not a regular mesh, like for example in the beard and brows builder. What's different here is it's like painted on the character's head. So it has no physics, it doesn't really have a mesh, it's kind of just like a graphic, which is great because that's perfect. That's what we're going for, painted. And as you see here, I'm going to choose some makeup for this character, but it's kind of hard. I don't actually use makeup, so sometimes I get it wrong. So I'm actually going in and editing things as I see that I don't like them. One thing I noticed right away is the eyebrows start to get really weird once you add makeup to them, unless they're a mesh. So we're gonna stay away from that. For the lips, I went with so I ended up with like a skin tone because everything else just seemed too crazy, like too unrealistic or too colorful, or didn't really go with the style and aesthetic that the character had. But eventually I landed on something that looked natural, it looked good, and so that's what you see here. One thing to remember is you always want to be replacing things instead of adding, because if you add, it's just going to put it on top of one another, which, unless that's what you want, is not going to give you the desired result. Once you're happy, you can go back to editing your character or changing some morphs or adding eyeshadow. What I'm about to do here is I'm gonna add in eyebrows, and I'm also gonna save. So the saving is really important because you definitely don't want to lose your file. I'm also exporting like 4 different ways. So I'm exporting in Unreal, I'm exporting for iClone, and I'm gonna export as an iAvatar. And I do this just in case one of those exports don't work. I have another way to get the content that I was just working on. So in the end, I'm gonna be in iClone anyways. So iAvatar is pretty useful. So once I save everything, I will go into iClone, but unfortunately, character creator crashed. So I'm gonna open it back up and finish that last export, because the last export was the iAvatar, and we may need to use that. Now we're gonna get the file ready for Marvelous Designer. So once we have it fully exported, the next logical step here is bringing this avatar into Marvelous to then start the process of creating the dress. First, we need to export our character from Character Creator. We will need to make sure our character is in T-pose to get the best results out of Marvelous Designer. Different poses can be found in the Motion tab and applied by double-clicking or dragging onto the character. Then we will need to go to File, Export, and select FBX. For the target preset, we will still select Maya, and in this case, we want to make sure we only export the mesh as there is no motion yet. For texture settings, it is not necessary to select Embed Texture, however, it can help better visualize the clothes on your character. Our default pose should always be the T-pose. Now we can finally export and save where it's most convenient for us. Moving on to Marvelous Designer, we need to import our character and essentially create an avatar so that we can create clothes over it. So we will go to File, Import, and select FBX. Find the file we just exported from Character Creator. While importing, since we don't have any animations yet, some of the object settings don't actually matter to us. Make sure the same setting is unchecked though. For scale, I recommend always selecting DAS. Now we can import the character. Once the character is imported, we will have to create a fitting suit, which will allow us to auto-fit any sort of clothing on our character in the future. You will notice one of the tools in the 3D window is the fitting suit. Now we can draw our fitting. Just to make sure that the position of each reference line is correct, after we are finished drawing the suit, we will happily apply it, which will create this transparent layer over your character that will show how your clothes will fit over them. You can drag the suit around to get more coverage and then save it as an avatar to reuse it in the future for auto-fitting. Now we can start by creating our dress. In the 2D pattern window, select the polygon tool and start laying out the front of the top. What I like to do is add more curve to some of the outer edges to create the neckline and make the dress seem more fitted. Now we can copy and mirror paste the pattern to create the second half of the front. This is how we can create two sides that are identical and merge them into one piece we can select the inner lines and click merge. Now we have the front, which we can duplicate and create the back. Next, we will create the bottom of the dress using the circle polygon tool. We will need to create an inner shape and cut it out as well. Then we can create a belt that will connect the two. Once we have our pattern drawn out, we have to arrange it in the 3D window around our character. Make sure the white is on the outside and the gray is on the inside. Once our pieces are arranged, we can start sewing. I prefer using the 3D viewport when sewing. It makes it easier to see which edges are connecting. Alas, we can simulate in a 3D window and see how our dress works using physics. If the dress is not perfectly fit after simulation, we can drag the pieces around until we are happy and pleased with the fitting. Marvelous also comes with different fabrics, so we could make the simulation even more realistic by applying a fabric with a specific weight to the dress. When you simulate, you can play around and see how the weight of the dress changes based on the different fabrics. Now it's time to start texturing our dress. For textures, I really wanted to get a high quality graphics, so I decided to use Canva, which is full of licensed images and designs that I am able to use. After I selected the ones I wanted, I just downloaded them all at once. When downloading, it is important to make sure that the transparent background is selected so that each one blends with the fabric on the dress. We will go to the texturing tool in the 2D pattern window and select graphic, which will allow us to add our pictures. Click where you want the graphic to be placed and resize it to fit however you want. We can just repeat this process for all of the graphics. Keep in mind the differences between the 2D and the 3D windows and make sure the orientation of the graphics, especially on the bottom part of the dress, is proper. So, after you finish every single thing in Marvelous, it definitely gets more interesting. Now we have to go into iClone 7. We have to use LiveLink and Unreal to make this all come together. Now, the most important thing here is that we are connected via LiveLink and we are sending in our lights and we are sending our camera and we are sending our character. The great thing is that the plugin takes care of all this fun stuff. All we have to do is set it all up and we have to select everything and we have to ensure that the names of our files, so our cameras, our models, everything does not have a space. Spaces create a huge issue in Unreal, and I don't really know why, but it does. So once you have your character from Character Creator, you want to import the dress. So right here, I'm importing the dress that was created and exported from Marvelous. Once the dress is on the character, we're pretty much ready to go. Now we have to bring this character into iClone. And I'm checking on the motion and changing the pose to make sure the dress conforms and has the skin weights of the character, which it did. So now you can see that the character is here, fully clothed, with a dress custom from Marvelous in iClone. Now the hair, obviously, I already told you it's not going to exist, but for now, it's going to exist because it's going to help me understand the weight and physics and how everything's working before we get to Unreal. So now I'm adding in motion capture. This was captured by the Perception Neuron. So right here, I'm just going to test it and make sure the dance is working, which it is. So you can see the character is using the motion from the Perception Neuron, the motion capture, and it's working perfectly. One thing I did was I checked foot contact, which makes sure the feet are making contact with the ground, which is actually pretty important. And right here, I'm changing the frames because the motion capture was, I think, 15,000 frames. So at least now we can get the whole entire dance. Because when we send it to Unreal, we want to make sure that it has everything. Testing your animation is really, really important. Because sometimes you'll notice that there's sliding, or there's issues with how the character is moving, or there's clipping. And you want to make sure that you fix all that. And make sure you change all of the names of the things in your scene to not have spaces. Again, very important. And if you would like to bring cameras and lights, you have to add them here first. Because once we go to Unreal, the only thing that will remain constant is just the animation. Everything else will be sent and into Unreal and will be static. So if you change it in iClone, nothing will change in Unreal. So once you're ready to go, you want to open Unreal and you want to open your project that you have the character creator set up and the live link plugins enabled. And if you don't know how to do that, I will post a video later showing how to connect those things. So once you know the hair works and the physics work, you can then take off the hair because you're not going to be sending that to Unreal. Once you're ready, you create your live link location. So what this does is it's going to tell Unreal where to put the character from iClone. So you'll know it's working if you see an iClone logo in the Unreal editor. And remember, this requires that you have live link plugin from Reallusion. Once you hit transfer file, it's going to take a while. It may take 2 minutes, it may take 20 minutes, it may take 15 minutes. Each time I do it, it does change a little bit. Generally, it takes about 6 minutes, but don't quote me on that. Each computer is different, every processor is different, so it really depends on the machine that you have. But once you hit transfer, you're going to see this black window that's going to have a bunch of white text flowing through it just constantly. You don't have to read any of it. You don't really have to worry about it. It has to finish. And once it's done, you'll notice that a whole bunch of new assets were created in Unreal. So we're just going to wait while that finishes. So once that's done, you should end up with something like what I have on my screen. Basically, it's the same character from iClone. The only difference is now it's in Unreal, and maybe it's in the wrong place. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just moving where she's starting to dance so that I can get the best angle. And as you see, she's here. It's linked. It's working, but no hair. And that's something we're gonna have to deal with in a few minutes. But if it looks like this, then you've done it right. One tip is in iClone, change the graphics to minimal to really lighten the load on your GPU. Once that's all complete, you should have something similar to what you see on my screen. You should be able to see your character, and your character should be animating. Now, one thing I did note and this is on every single character from Reallusion that comes into Unreal, you have to go inside of the actual character in Unreal, and you have to take off something called cast shadows on the eyelashes. If you don't, the eyes become really weird and black, and this actually solves that problem 100%, and that's great, because now inside the editor, when she's dancing, you can now see her eyes really, really clear, and that's really great. And you can see when I turn it on and off that there's black meshes on the outskirts of her eyes, so this gets rid of that. The only other thing I would say is make sure you build your lighting, because if you want it to look nice, then you need to build that lighting, and that can take anywhere from 5 to 6 minutes. But once everything is built and working, you are ready to do the hair. So the hair is, it's really cool how it works in Unreal. Basically, you can have a groom asset, which could be from Maya. In my case, it's from Maya and XGen. And when you import the hair, it assumes all gravity and physics because of the Niagara particle system, which is really powerful for hair. So as you can see right here, I'm just testing the dance, making sure there's no weird issues, no clipping, no janky movement, no foot sliding, because I hate foot sliding. So thank God there's no foot sliding. So right now you see I am about to do the hair. So what's really cool about doing the hair is you get to design the hair without the character and then import it, or design it right on the character depending on where you go. You can use character creator hair. I chose not to because I wanted really good physics from Unreal, and currently those two are not compatible. So iClone physics in Unreal with hair and Niagara are not compatible yet, and that could change. But for right now, you can see here is my hair from Maya and XGen, and I am just, moving it around, getting it to where it's supposed to be so that it sits naturally on the character's head. I'm also hitting play to do simulation, which is important because once you simulate it, that's when the Niagara particle effects actually take effect. So once it's fully simulated, you will be able to then hit play in iClone, and you will be able to see your character's hair move using real-time physics. And it actually is really cool once it's all working.
We don't talk about Bruno, no, no, no. We don't talk about Bruno. But it was my wedding day. We were getting ready and there wasn't a cloud in the sky.
No clouds allowed in the sky.
Bruno walks in with a mischievous grin.
Thunder.
You're telling this story or am I?
I'm sorry, mi vida go on.
Bruno says it looks like rain.
Why is he telling?
In doing so, he floods my brain.
I will like the umbrella.
Pouring a hurricane.
What a joyous day, but anyway,
We don't talk about
Bruno, no, no, no. We don't talk about Bruno.
Hey, grew to live in fear, Bruno stuttering or stumbling. I can always hear him sort of muttering and mumbling. I associate him with the sound of falling sand. With the heavy lift, with the gift so humbling. Always left abuela in the family fumbling, grappling with prophecies they couldn't understand. Do you understand?
7 foot frame, rats so long his back. When he calls your name, it all fades to black. Yeah, he sees your dreams, feasts on your screams. We don't talk about Bruno, no, no, no. We don't talk about Bruno.
He told me my fish would die the next day. Dead. No, no.
Told me I'd grow a gut, and just like he said that all my hair would disappear. Now look at my hair.
Your fate is sealed when your prophecy is read. He told me that the life of my dreams would be promised and someday be mine. He told me that my power would grow like the grapes that thrive on the vine.
Oye, Mariano's on his
He
way.
told me that the man of my dreams would be just